So let us now see some of the videos, execution videos of the lesson plan on building fundamental movement skills.
Lesson K 1.10 Little Jumps. Activity 1 Jumping Beam. Activity Execution. Mark a start and end line at 20 feet distance. Arrange 5 balance beams 2 feet apart. Place poly spots under the balance beam for better grip. Divide the children into groups of 4. Create similar setups based on the size of your class. On your signal, the children will stand on a balance beam, bend down, touch the balance beam, stand up, jump and land on 2 feet simultaneously. The children will perform the same on all 5 balance beam and join the back of the line. Lesson K 1.10 Little Jumps. Activity 2 Jumping on the spot. Mark a starting and end line at 20 feet distance. Place 3 balance beams in front of each other at 4 feet distance. Add a hula hoop in front of each balance beam and place 2 poly spots shoulder width apart in the hula hoop. Place 2-letter alphabet words on either side of the hula hoop using alphabet cards. Divide the students into groups of 4. Ask the students to balance on the beam, jump onto the hula hoop and land, making sure they land on 2 feet. Once they land in, they will reach the 2 letters on either side. The activity will continue till every child starts landing on the spot called poly spot successfully.
Lesson K 1.00 Treasure Hunt with FMS. Place 4 marking cones and place 4 poly spots with flat rings for the groups to stand. Scatter cones, beanbag, saucer cones in the play area and ensure that some of the beanbags or some of the saucer cones, marking cones have a prop inside, either a plastic ball, a beanbag, and keep some of the props, cones, saucer cones, balance beam empty without any. You're just, hey, they will वो सब देख रहे हैं अभी वो. Divide the class into 4 groups. Ask them to assemble at the respective poly spot. The trainer will call out a fundamental movement skill, and the students have to do that and get a prop for their each group and place it back. After they have placed it back, the next person in the group will go and bring the prop. For demonstration, we have 4 person here demonstrating, representing 4 groups. Now, just make them 4. Make them 4 in a line. One after the other. हाँ, इसका close ले लो. Ready? Run. First person in the group goes. One chance. They will only get one chance. If there is nothing, they have to come back and stand at the behind, and then the next person goes. If they get 3 in a row empty, then oh, 4. वो दिख रहा हो उसको. Yes. क्या यार, इतना चीटिंग करी देखने के बाद भी तुम लोग.
Lesson N.6 Run, Pick, Place. Activity 1 Smile Relay. Mark a starting line and end line at 20 feet using hula hoops. Place as many props as per the number of students in each group at the end hula hoops. Divide the children into 2 groups. You can go up to 6 groups depending on the size of your class. On your signal, the first child from each group should run to the end, pick up a prop from the hula hoop and place it in their group's hula hoop and give the next person a high five. Continue doing this until all the props are transferred to the first hula hoop. Lesson N.6 Run, Pick and Place. Activity 2 Freeze and Share. Mark a circular play area using saucer cones. Scatter flat rings and hula hoops around the play area. These are the bases. Call out fire in the mountain and ask the children to walk, run and jump around. Let them explore the entire area, avoiding the bases. When the trainer says freeze, one student stands alone in the base. When the trainer says freeze, two students can share a hula hoop or a flat ring. Start. Fire in the mountain. Fire in the mountain. Run, run, run. Freeze. One. Start. Fire in the mountain. Run, run, run. Fire in the mountain. Run, run, run. Freeze. Two. Fire in the mountain. Run, run, run. Lesson N.8 Bean Balance. Activity 1 Balancing Buddy. Activity Execution. Mark a rectangular play area using marking cones. Scatter as many flat rings or hula hoops as the number of children. Place one beanbag in each of the hula hoops. Ask the children to stand in their hula hoop or flat ring. On your command, the children will place the beanbags on different parts of their body and try to balance it for at least 5 seconds. On their head, ask the children to balance the beanbag on their head and count out loud while balancing the beanbag on their head. On their palm, instruct the children to count the fingers while balancing the beanbag on their palm. On the back of the palm, challenge the children to balance the beanbag on the back of the palm and stretch their hand out. Lesson N.8 Bean Balance. Activity 2 Number Treasure Hunt. Activity Execution. Mark a rectangular play area using polyspots. Place marking cones lined up with numbers around the play area. Give one beanbag to each child. You call out numbers and a body part. The children need to walk, run or jump to the marking cone and balance their beanbag on the back or front of their palm for 5 seconds. Repeat the activity calling out different numbers.
Lesson S 1.27 Alphabet Games Activity 1 Alphabet Train and Useful Places Station Activity Execution. Mark 4 circle play areas using polyspots and saucer cones. Divide the class into 4 equal groups. Assign a circle to each group. Place flat rings or hula hoops in each circle corresponding to the number of students in each group. Instruct each student to step into a hula hoop and lift it at their waist level. Explain to the students that they will collectively form letters of the alphabet. Instruct each group to discuss and choose an alphabet letter of their choice. Upon your signal, each group will form the chosen letters by connecting with each other. After forming the letter, each group asks the trainer to identify the letter they created. If the letter is not easily recognizable, allow the students to share the intended letter formation. Award 10 points to the group that accurately formed the chosen letter or correctly identified by the other groups. Encourage collaboration by permitting groups to assist each other in forming the letter if needed. Give an opportunity to create 2 more letters of their choice. After a few letter formations, ask the students to form a hoop train and ask them to move around the circle. Call out various station names such as school, post office, hospital, zoo, market, bank, and fire station. Once they hear the word instruct the train to stop in their circle and form the first letter of the announced useful phrase. In this case, it is post office, so the letter will be P. You can also ask the groups how these places are helpful to us. Lesson S 1.27 Alphabet Games, Activity Execution, Body Shape Alphabet Formation. Activity Execution: create 4 circles without hoops or flat rings. Use saucer cones as in Activity 1. Divide the class into 4 equal groups, assigning each group to a circle. The trainer calls out relationships with body parts, such as round, narrow, or wide. Ask the students to demonstrate the body shapes called out by the trainer. Introduce alphabet letters, for example X, O, C, Y, and ask the students to form the letters with their bodies. Prompt students to relate the body shape to the announced letter. After a few shapes, instruct the students to collectively perform the letters based on the relationship with their bodies. Alone in mass, solo, with a partner, give students time to think and ask them to form the letters using their bodies. The trainer and other groups will have to guess that letter form. Encourage creativity and variety of body shapes. You can ask them to make a shape as one group. When the trainer calls out between two groups come together and make a letter or shape. Again, encourage creativity. Ask the students to form letters with their bodies. Lesson S 1.28 Parachute Popcorn with Movement Skills. Activity 1 Hot Popcorn. Activity Execution. Ask the students to stand holding the parachute. It could be 1 or 2 students per color. For demonstration, we have less number of students, hence there will be some colors blank. Ask the students to hold the parachute and shake it up and down. Throw in some bean bags, fleece balls, plastic balls and scarf bean bags. Ask the students to shake and throw the props out of the parachute for 30 seconds and then keep the parachute on the ground. After 30 seconds, ask the students to stop and then do the skills where the props has stopped or the nearest triangle to get a combination of movement skill patterns. If all the props are in the center, ask the student to shake the prop only once and place it on the ground. Now, wherever the prop lies, you will get a combination of 1 red or blue and 1 green and yellow. In this case, 1 red, which is walk, and 1 green, which is fast. So they will walk fast. We can ask the students on blue to collect the bean bags and the students on green and yellow to collect the balls. And then place it back on the parachute. Now let's shake the parachute again and place it back on the ground. Wherever the prop lie on the parachute, use the combination and do the skills. which jump clockwise. Hold the parachute this time and let's do this skill. Let's skip clockwise. Lesson S1.28 Parachute Popcorn with Movement Skills. Activity 2 Shakers vs Throwers. Activity Execution. Divide the students into two groups. One group called Shakers will hold the parachute by folding it 10 times. Group 2, called throwers, they will stand 2 to 3 feet away from the parachute and throw props such as beanbags, scarf, plastic balls and fleece balls onto the parachute. On your signal, the shakers will start shaking the parachute and the throwers will throw props on the parachute for 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, the trainer will see which props are on the parachute and call those skills to be done. Once the trainer has decided which skill has to be done, the shakers will hold the parachute at high level and the throwers will do the skills underneath the parachute and come back out. Likewise, continue the activity for 2 to 3 rounds and change rules.
S2.11 Parachute Know My Parachute Activity 2 Movement Skills with Parachute. Activity Execution. Students start at the same position as they were at the end of Activity 1, with Group 1 at run 12 o'clock, Group 2 at slide 3 o'clock, Group 3 at 6 o'clock and Group 4 at walk 9 o'clock. Okay. All of them are standing on red color. Tell the students that they will learn about quarters and triangles that form our parachute. Every quarter has 4 parts, and every quarter starts with the red color and ends on green color. Tell the children that every quarter has 4 triangles. Quarter 1 has 4 triangles: run, hop, high, hop and clockwise. Quarter 2 has 4 triangles: slide, anti-clockwise, leap and blank. Quarter 3 has gallop, blank, skip and fast. Quarter 4 has walk, slow, jump and low. Now, trainer will ask the students to hold the parachute. Trainer will divide the students on red and blue color. Change clockwise. Change. Trainer will call out a color, either red or blue, and children have to perform that skill while changing clockwise. Blue. Now trainer will explain to students that on red we have 4 movement skills: run, slide, gallop and walk, and blue also. The trainer calls out the color. 2 groups on blue color will change anti-clockwise, performing the skill mentioned on their triangle. Now same activity, holding on their waist and changing. Be observant that the students are holding the parachute with an overhand grip. In this lesson, children are learning about 8 fundamental movement skills or locomotor skills, and they are learning about colors, and they are learning about 2 direction, clockwise and anti-clockwise. When inside the clubhouse, reinforce the 8 locomotor skills on red and blue color. Children should know this well. Whenever a color is called red and blue, they should know it's a locomotor skill.
Lesson S 2.13 Throw, React and Catch. Activity 1 Agility, Reaction, Catch. Activity Execution. Mark a starting point at yellow saucer cone and place 4 numbered cones 1, 2, 3 and 4. Place a blue saucer cone 4 feet from the marking cone and place a red saucer cone 3 feet from the blue saucer cone. Place an agility ball in a hula hoop at 5 feet distance from the red saucer cone. Divide the class into groups of 7 and assemble them at the yellow saucer cone. Nominate one student from each group to stand in the hula hoop with an agility reaction ball, and 2 students stand at red and blue saucer cones. The remaining 4 will stand at marking cones 1, 2, 3 and 4. Make similar setups based on the size of your class. On your signal to start, the groups will start passing the juggling rings within their groups. The student in the hoop drops the agility ball to the left side at shoulder level. The student at the red saucer cone will try and catch the ball after it bounces. If the ball is missed, allow the catcher to attempt to catch it after 2 or 3 bounces. After 2 catches, the catchers replace the students at the hoop. The group changing sequence is as follows. The student at the marking cone 1 will go to the blue saucer cone. The student at blue saucer cone will move to the red saucer cone. The student in the second marking cone has come to the first. Person at the third marking cone will come to the second, and the student in the hula hoop has joined the group as the fourth student, and the activity continues. As soon as you hear change, the students standing in the marking cone 1 has to come to the blue saucer cone. Rotate the students within each group so that each gets a chance to perform all activities. Lesson S 2.27 Manipulative Skill Circuit Sharing in Groups. Activity Skill Circuit. Activity execution. Create 6 stations in a square shaped play area using saucer cones and marking cones. Divide the class into 6 groups. Before the activity, let's do a simple math exercise. Ask the students the following questions. How many groups are there in class? 6. How many students in each group? 7. Calculate the total number of students in class. 42. Assign each group to a respective station. Group 1, Station 1, Group 2, Station 2, and so on. For demonstration, we have only one group, so all of them are at Station 1. Similarly, for a regular class, each group will be performing at the respective station. Station 1, Scoop, Toss and Catch. Group 1. Students perform toss and catch with the scoop and toss set. Each gets one pair. It's okay for the students to step outside the play area if the space is less. Station 2, Basketball, Dribbling and Passing. Group 2, give basketball to each pair and ask the pair to perform 3 dribbles on the right, 3 dribbles on the left hand before passing it to their partner. Station 3, Football, Dribbling and Stopping. Group 3, provide a football to each student to perform the football dribbling skills and stop the ball with the soles of their foot. Station 4, Cricket ball, balance and tap. Group 4, provide a cricket bat size 2 and a plastic ball to each student and ask them to balance the ball for 5 to 10 seconds and tap it continuously to keep the ball in the air. low, medium and high catches with partner. Station 5. Provide each pair with a soft tennis ball and instruct them to practice low, medium and high catches by throwing underarm and then overhead. Station 6. Agility ball, juggling, ring, throw and catch. Ask the students to form a circle and provide 2 juggling rings and 1 agility ball. They will toss and catch the juggling rings with the students standing opposite them. After a few minutes, toss the agility ball at the center of the circle, letting it bounce and catch. When the agility ball drill is in progress, ask the students not to step forward but wait for the ball to come to them to avoid bumping their heads into each other. Post-circuit discussion. Gather the students in groups and ask them the following questions. What is the total number of skills we learned across all 6 stations today? For trainer's reference, each station had 2 skills, so we learned a total of 12 skills. Next, ask how many students were in group 1 and how many scoop and toss sets were used to perform the activity. For example, if there were a total of 6 students in group 1 divided into 3 pairs, so we use a total of 3 sets for the activity. So 3 pairs, 1 set each. Finally, we practiced each other's skill at station 2 for 2 minutes. So how many minutes did it take for us to complete the circuits? For reference, we have 6 stations, so it took us a total of 24 minutes to complete the entire circuit. 6 stations times 2 minutes per station, 12 minutes.